Joanne, thank you so much for accepting my invitation to my series on asking the hard questions. What legacy are we leaving our young? And for those of you who do not know Joanne Hession is the brain behind Lift Ireland. And without any further ado, I'm going to ask you, Joanne, to give us a little of your background and what it was that inspired you to take this brave move that is really taking a grip on Ireland at the moment.
Thanks, Teresa, and thank you so much for inviting me on here today. It's great to see you again, and great to see you. We saw each other in the flesh pre-COVID, so it's so nice to see you again.
Thank you.
It really is. Yeah. So, my name is Joanne Hession. I am an entrepreneur, and I suppose I started my first business when I was 27 in my parents' TV room, and that business still exists, and it's called the Entrepreneurs Academy, but I have stepped out of that really because I got a massive, I suppose, pull or desire or felt the need to go and set up Lift. And I knew I couldn't really do both. Mm-hmm. So I decided to step away from the team in the Entrepreneurs Academy and left it in very good hands. There's an amazing team there, and started to drive forward Lift. And I suppose if you ask, well, why give up your job and why go and do it? I think it's probably a little bit of adrenaline and madness, but more so than that, I think over the years, a couple of things had been bothering me. Firstly, I adore Ireland. I absolutely, and you know, I mean, my hair is quite dark and in the sun, I'm quite tanned, and my dad is quite dark. And he always said that we were really mostly Spanish, but he was just making that up, I think. And I was always delighted when I found out my DNA and I was 92% really Irish, and I was absolutely thrilled. I love this country, you know, and it doesn't matter whether you were born here or, but once you are here, that's the important thing. But I do love this country. And yet I've been fortunate over my years to have spent time in other countries and in, you know, really much worse off places than we are here. I spent a year in the Rwandan refugee camps after the Rwandan genocide. Right. And so that there's nothing like that to kind of stop you in your tracks and make me realize how fortunate I am to be here. Yeah, so that was one of the things that was always on my mind, Teresa. And then secondly, whilst we have this great country, it would bother me when I'd watch the newspapers and the media and see things like the Morris McCabe Tribunal. And, you know, I know fantastic guards, and I'd be thinking to myself, what happens? You know, what happens there that things go so wrong and someone can't do the right thing? What happens there? And then, you know, look, I don't have to spell this out. It was across sports, across business, across every sector of society, church and so on. We can see where human behavior, we've let ourselves down. And so I suppose that was on my mind, that we have a great country and we're good, but we're good with a small g. And we're not good with a big G, and we could be good with a big G. And I think I want to be good with a big G, you know, from that point of view. And so that whole gap between where we are now and where we could be was bothering me. And then I was doing a lot of leadership training, mostly in corporations. And I felt, you know, it's great that I can do this, but wouldn't it be great if we could do some kind of leadership work with the not-for-profits, the communities, the schools, you know? I know
you use the Robin Hood method. The Robin Hood method. I love that as a description. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah. So, and the Robin Hood method is just a term I coined when I was in a meeting one day that's made sense. Where I remember sitting in this wonderful partner organization that are now partners of ours, and talking to Noel and Ken and saying, look, this is the way it is. You're going to pay for it, and we're going to give it for free to everybody else. And that's what we have done. It's called the Robin Hood model. Now, we don't give it for free in all cases. If an organization can fund it in some way, they give us some small amount, as many do. But it's really so that money is never the barrier, Teresa. And that was an important part of this for me in setting it up, that we could set up a framework and a process of really good leadership strengthening processes, so that we could know how to strengthen our leadership, but that everybody could take part. Money could never be the object, and that was an important part of this.
And I note that there are 8 principles. You're looking at listening, positive attitude, respect, determination, empathy and understanding, accountability, of course, which underscores effective leadership everywhere, honesty and integrity, and then mindfulness. And it's all encompassing. It's lovely. It's all the skills that we would hope would be at the heart of, I suppose, ethical leadership and leadership with heart. And what I love about it is how you can apply it at school level or right through into the business world, because I'm always harping on about the disconnect between the education world and the business world. This brings it together, even in understanding. Yeah.
And in fact, the 8 there that you mentioned, and in fact, there are a few other ones now. We didn't come up with those ourselves. So we felt it would be a bit arrogant of us if we sort of imposed on people in Ireland what the areas of leadership and the behaviours we need to improve. So we did independent research, and we asked people, in order to lead ourselves well, what leadership behaviors do we need to improve? And they were the top areas that came out, except for mindfulness. Mindfulness has been added in by one partner has asked us specifically to add that in one.
And you can see its space, can't you?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally.
So Lift Ireland in and of itself as a title conjures up images of hope, promise, confidence building, movement of our people, a synergy, a united endeavour. And while it has connotations of a heavy lifting act, I love the synergy of bringing people together towards a united goal. So in hindsight, at this point in time, COVID raging, etc., you were right bang on there on time with your vision, etc. Obviously, you answered to the call, as it were. So it's one great movement gathering momentum in Ireland. That's why I've asked you to come on this journey with me, asking the hard questions. We're living in a space where people fear asking questions, maybe because they're afraid of rejection or afraid of appearing foolish. So I'm going out on a wing, asking the questions. So what's your broad objective with Lift Ireland?
Yeah, so I've said I'll give this 10 years, and we're going to take 10 years to get 10% of the population actually strengthening their leadership using the Lift process. So it's a 10-year goal, 10% of the population, and we are almost finished year 3. So, it is, our vision is...
You will far surpass 10%, you know that?
Well, do you know what? I did at one stage get all excited and enthusiastic and nearly killed my team by saying, let's try and do it in 5. But I think we'll do it in 10. We really will. We spent the first 2 years really strengthening the team, the processes, the structures, and building credibility. And our vision is to create positive change in Ireland's leaders, one person at a time. And that one person at a time is really key. We started one person at a time. We started in May 2018. By the end of the year, we had about 1,000 people involved. By the end of year 2, we had 6,000 people involved. We're going to hit year 3 in May now coming up, and we're going to have 17,000 people involved.
And explain to me the organizations that they come from. That will give the listener the overview and maybe entice them to pick up the phone and make a call to you.
Absolutely. So, and the best way to do it is to go onto the website liftireland.ie. But the organizations, we have partners such as the ESB, AIB, CPL Group, big organizations in the country, as well as the Burn Smokehouse in Lisdoonvarna and Wedding Dates in Cork, and all these wonderful, wonderful smaller organizations. We have sports organisations like Munster Rugby that are living out Lift through there, and Rowing Ireland. We have universities. NUI Galway is the first university to fully partner with Lift, and we're piloting it currently with UCD, UL, DCU also. And we have
loads of schools I know as well. I've introduced so many educators to it who are embracing it. Speak to us about that, its appeal for schools.
Yeah, we do. And in fact, in our first year, we just had one school and we piloted it out to make sure that we were doing it properly and the right way. So we piloted it with Comfy College in Leixlip. Our second year, then we had much greater demand as word just started to get out. And we took 28 schools in our second year, and then we hit COVID. Currently, we've 150 secondary schools, post-primary schools from across the country, all doing lift with their students. So it's fantastic. And it's the exact same program that, and while I was mentioning the organizations there, I mentioned the corporates and the sports, but another really big part of the organizations that we have are the nonprofits. Like we have Merchants Quay have just come on board, Purple House Cancer Centre, Laura Lynn, Goal Ireland, Cancer Trials Ireland, all these fantastic not-for-profits are all using Lift as well. But in the schools, we have 150 schools that are doing the same program that the people in our corporates, in our sports clubs, in our universities, in our not-for-profits are doing. We are all as a nation coming together to do the exact same program to strengthen ourselves as leaders. And Teresa, let's just talk about leadership for just 1 second, right? Because sometimes when we talk about leadership, we get a misunderstanding that it's something high-powered or highfalutin, and it's not. The thing about it is that you're a leader and so am I. And so is a 14-year-old boy in school, and so is a 16-year-old girl in school, or anybody, you know, any age and any gender in school and any college and everything else. They are all leaders, because if you've got people around you that are paying attention to what you're saying, then you're leading them. And sometimes they're paying a lot of attention, in which case you're leading them well, and sometimes you're leading them not so well. And what Lift does is it shows you how to strengthen your leadership muscle so that you have more positive influence and authentic influence and good influence. We're talking about positive leadership here with the people around us. So every single young person in a school, every teacher, every person that works in a school, every single person is a leader. And
but if you consider, Joanne, what the seeds you're sowing among our young for the future, when they go leave secondary school, go into college as responsible young people, and then into the workplace. And the workplaces these days are decrying the loss of soft skills. There, you're setting the groundwork to meet that deficit.
Well, I think we're kind of opening the door, and you know, what's really happening is they're doing it themselves. So we equip and empower them and give it to the school. We give Lift to the school. We equip them, we empower them, we show them how to do it. And then the students run it themselves, like it is student-led and it's peer-to-peer. It's phenomenal how it works in the schools.
And it's a synergy between staff and students.
It's great.
Working. And that, you know, the word collaboration is used everywhere, but this collaboration within school and this notion of student voice, and even having a group of teachers trained up and then moving on to the student council, moving on to TY, and they then taking the reins and moving it on again. It's like a whispering game, you know.
It's fantastic. The idea is that a 14-year-old might do a Lift round table with one of the TYs in school, and then they get into TY, and then they get involved as a facilitator.
Excellent.
And then they go on to college and they do it again, and then they go into work, you know, or they go straight to work and they do it again because it's happening in their organization. So that's very exciting. We will create a nation of really strong leaders by doing this.
Fabulous. Now, I repeatedly ask, what legacy are we leaving our young? And I'm now directing that question to you. What legacy are you, through Lift Ireland, hoping to leave our young with through teaching the skills of authentic, ethical leadership? And I'm going to bring it through. Yeah.
It's a great question, Teresa, and I'm going to turn it around a little bit, because rather than thinking of us leaving a legacy, I think that our young people are building a legacy. And that's what's happening with Lift Ireland. We're like, each of us is a piece of a jigsaw. Mm-hmm. And all together we will make up a jigsaw that is a wonderful legacy for Ireland. But it's not that we are creating it. It's actually that the young people are taking part in their droves, in their thousands, they're taking part, and they are understanding what real respect is, what real listening and understanding is, what positive attitude is, and that it's a choice that we can make. There's so much of this that is unexplained. So many of these words that, as you referred to as soft skills, that are thrown around the place, like respect. I mean, I grew up in a home, fabulous parents, but one would say respect your mother and the other would say respect your father, and they both say respect your teacher, and I thought it was an authority thing. I had no idea that real respect, whether I like what somebody else says or not, real respect is about appreciating and understanding that that person has value and treating that person in that way.
Sure.
And so I think what we're doing is opening the door to give greater understanding to our young people and to our not so young people on this is what good behavior is. This is what
it ties in so beautifully to that notion of dignity at work. Every workplace has a dignity at work policy, but it's giving feet to that policy, to the enactment of the sentiments of that policy. I think it's a brilliant idea.
You see, policies and rules and everything else, we can have those all over the place and hung up on our walls and on our iPhones and everything else, but it all comes down to human behavior. Sure. And we often, when we get stressed or under pressure or in a sticky situation, we can't remember those anyway.
Yeah.
So, those lists don't guide the behavior. It's only by going through a process that helps us to stop and reflect on our behavior and helps us to strengthen our muscle all the time for the next time we're in a situation like that we can do it.
So I suppose in truth, educators here in Ireland often fall foul of unfair commentary, particularly through the media. And educators, as the molders of the minds of tomorrow, the future leaders of Ireland, really deserve our admiration and our affirmation, and that we're all behind them. I think LIFT is a channel through which to garner more of that good feel. What inspiring words can you offer to sustain and motivate a group of people who really put their shoulder to the wheel during COVID-19, have done Trojan work, and really are to be credited with having held the education system together at a crossroads they could never even have envisaged coming around?
Yeah, I have to say I have been I have such admiration for teachers and school staff in our country. I cannot say enough positive things about them, Teresa. They have given up their time. When I just look at the LIFT experience, right? Mm-hmm. They have come on to training with us. They don't have to do that. Sure. They have come on to training with us. They've given up their time. They've given up days when they've been off to come on to training with us. Mm-hmm. They probably don't get any recognition at all for that. One teacher last year did it from her car because she was in the west of the country where do you remember when the storms were on and the electricity went down? She did it from her car. She did the training for a day from her car to make sure that she didn't miss it, so that not for herself, so that she could bring it to her students. That is phenomenal. The teacher, apart from what they are doing, that I don't know who is talking badly about teachers, but they're certainly not meeting any of the tens and hundreds of teachers that we're meeting in LIFT, because they are just incredible people. And honestly, and school staff as well, principals, everything, the respect they show their students, the way that they are looking for every opportunity to give the student voice, to empower the students, and how excited they are about something like LIFT because they know it's really going to benefit their students. I've just found them phenomenal. And just from LIFT Ireland, it's a massive, massive thank you for everything that they're doing. They are the frontliners, and I have huge respect for how they value our young leaders.
It's a very different type of profession, you know. It's heart and soul stuff. And even the little devil who would be getting in trouble, you'd have to love him. And I think if parents could really encapsulate in their minds how teachers in actual fact love their children and really want to see them getting on, it's a brilliant picture to conjure up in your mind. And it's the closest you'll get to support for the home and the endeavour of rearing the children, you know. But anyway, so you obviously spotted the challenge that people are being faced with at the moment. And way back, I suppose, post 2008, people during that downturn, there were real challenges. We're now facing more challenges in the future post COVID-19. So what legacy have we, the baby boomers, left the millennials and Generation Z? Have we been fair with the legacy we have left them? Have we left them opportunity or challenge? What would you say?
You see, I think that I think there's opportunity in every challenge. You have to remember, Teresa, that I am just by the way I'm made, I'm an entrepreneur. So when I see challenges, I know there are always opportunities somewhere hiding under the covers there.
Sure.
And whilst I think that it is perhaps quite difficult at the moment for a lot of people, we as human beings are able for an awful lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, you know, I think the more that we can instill in our young people that innovation and adaptability does not have to mean coming up with seismic change. It can be just the tiny little steps that you make every single day. And that being resilient, you know, might be about getting out of bed in the morning, but it might also be something much bigger. And equipping them with, we can get over a huge amount. We can get over a huge amount. We can cope with a huge amount. I don't think we've left them with a whole load of challenges. And the other thing with that is that I don't think we've left them with anything that they can't cope with. I have been, you know, astounded by the young teenagers that I've done lift with, who have talked to me about respect and integrity, and just the maturity is phenomenal, and the depth is phenomenal. And I think sometimes we might knock that out of them, but they're amazing human beings and amazing young leaders. And I think they can cope with an awful lot more than we give them credit for.
I think in ways we've, through, let's say my generation, through being too good and giving too much to our young, we've disempowered them in ways. But I think this time of lockdown, learning from home, etc., is a brilliant experience in resilience building. And that notion of building resilience through the experiential, watching how others are coping. And my father's great saying, necessity is the mother of invention. And no doubt about it, it is. You come up with innovative solutions. And while the pivot is towards technology, I think the trick really is to ground our young and get the brain wired in the traditional sense first before letting them loose on technology. And then they will both come together nicely. It's where the young are over, let's say, inappropriately dependent on technology at a young age that it becomes more difficult to get that grounding right.
And on the technology piece, and I, you know, I'm not, I suppose, like, I know the downsides of technology, and it worries me. It does worry me. But is that an adult problem, or is that a young person's problem? I mean, I think it's an adult problem, and
I think the adults may have. You see, there's an apparent sophistication about a young child being able to operate these gadgets and appearing tech savvy at a very young age. But in actual fact, these gadgets and the iPad and the screen cannot become substitute parents.
No. And in fact, there's a great program, I don't know if you've watched it yet, Teresa, called The Social Dilemma, when it has a lot of the top people that are part of the big tech firms, and none of them would give social media to their kids. They wouldn't give phones to their kids. So if that's not a lesson for us, I don't know what is. But I think look, it's very complicated, but I think as adults, it's about how we model good behavior.
Absolutely.
And I don't see any problem at all. I have 3 teenagers, 3 fantastic girls. We don't see any problem at all with giving them hard chores and limiting mobile phone use.
You have it right, you see. But I was reading recently in a paper about digital technology in education that there are schools in Silicon Valley called the Waldorf schools, and the workers in IT in Silicon Valley always send their children to the Waldorf schools when they are educated past the age of 12 before they get a device in their hands. So there's some learning in that. What do they know that the rest of us don't know, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So what will Ireland look like post-COVID-19 in your view? What will we have gained? And more worryingly, what will we have lost?
I'm definitely glass half full about COVID, Teresa. Now, I must sort of prefix this with COVID has stayed far from my door. So that it's not the disease itself, which obviously is horrendous.
Sure.
But I think that it has given us a chance to stop and reflect on what is really important.
Absolutely.
And all the things that I know that have happened, all the terrible things, if I think of terrible things that have happened that I'm not happy about in my life over the last year, I've had close people get cancer, I've had close people lose jobs, you know, I've had all these kind of things happen. They would have happened anyway. The thing about COVID is that it made me pay more attention. And I think that that's a gift that I certainly have been given, I think, I don't want to speak for a lot of people, except that I think we tend to get very busy with life.
Just slowed us down. It has really slowed us down.
Yeah, it has. Even though I'm actually choosing to do as much work as ever, it has given me a chance to stop and think about what is really important and be more intentional. And that's important. I'm also, whenever I go on a Zoom call or a Microsoft Teams call or anything like that, I'm so aware that that person that I'm sitting opposite may have a sick relative behind the door, may have a child at home, they're trying to homeschool or whatever it might be. So I think it's given us more emphasis. So I think it's given us a lot. Also, again, if I just use myself as an example, I walk in my local park every day now. Sure, I hardly knew it was there before, but yes, now I do, and I see all my people in my neighborhood there too, and I think there's been a lot of really good community, fantastic everyday leaders out and about. I think we've seen a lot of really good things in the country.
It's the trick is now to hold on to the good habits. But I remember I did my training with you pre-COVID. And the notion of using this lift model in the family circle. So many homes now have experienced the 20-something-year-olds relocating back from Dublin, etc., to home and working from home. There's a real opportunity there to use the model around the family table in terms of communication, because you now may end up with 5-6 adults in a house where mom and dad were experiencing the empty nest before that. Yeah. So there's a real opportunity there for the use of it within the home as well, wouldn't you think?
Absolutely. And I think it's given us a great opportunity to stop and think about who we want to spend time with and also what we don't want to do. I started a list of non-negotiables probably about April or May, when I realized, wow, I mean, I used to be up and out in my car by about 6:30 a.m. every morning. I missed my kids. I didn't ever see them in the morning, and I got back, after dinner time mostly. So they've definitely become non-negotiables for me. I will not do that again, no matter what. I just won't. So I think it's given us a greater chance to think about what is important to us in life and what isn't.
And the beauty of this training is that you have pivoted to online training. So it can be done right across from your workspace in your home to any place in the country. Isn't that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought we would take about 9 months to go online, and we took 4 days. So with COVID, we had no choice about it, and it has helped hugely. And in fact, you referred earlier to the sort of the negatives of COVID. And look, I would hate to go by without saying that some of the micro and small businesses that are the absolute backbone of this country have been seriously affected by COVID, and we need to help and strengthen them, as well as the well-being of our teachers and our school staff, that have put in. I mean, I know in my local school, they have been working the whole way through holidays and everything else, and working extremely hard. So it's important for us all to support them. And I think that's a really important part of post-COVID, that we make sure that we don't break people, and that we as a country support them. And there are many different ways that we can do that.
And that notion of, in the past, we always heard the term work-life balance, but I think a new meaning has been brought to work-life integration. If you consider the four pillars of our lives literally landed on the kitchen table at the same time: our work, our home life, our networking, our community building, and me time. Time for yourself, but it's just to get that balance, find closure at the end of the workday, and move on to servicing the other pillars of your life as well.
It's a funny thing, isn't it, that we talk about work-life balance, and yet we don't talk about eat-life balance or fitness-life balance. We only talk about work-life balance as if work isn't part of life, whereas it's really about getting harmony between all those, however you go about it. It's not about the time that's spent in it. It's about harmony is the key word there. And how do we get a harmonious,
And I remember I used to always send around a checklist when I was a leader in education, a checklist for time management ideas. Have you come across a good idea for time management, whatever? I remember a remark written by one lady one day, and she said, I must find closure at the end of my work day so that I can move on to my yoga class, whatever else I'm doing for the evening. If I don't find closure at the end of that to-do list, it's niggling on my mind all evening. So maybe this was a juncture where people got to put manners on work and say, right, this is the end of the work day now. I'm moving on to the rest, the other things in my life. And plus, people who might have been on the road a lot, away on business, etc., they got to know their kids in a different way. Wouldn't you think? Yeah.
Absolutely. I have a group there's 10 of us that are all female entrepreneurs, and we meet every 12 weeks. We meet more often now on Zoom, but quite a few travel internationally and are thrilled with being able to do everything on Zoom because of the family unit and the benefits.
So while we need to meet each other in the flesh, and I suppose unlike youngsters who are in formation at the minute, we've had the beauty of meeting each other and building relationships face to face. But there's no substitute for that. While I think post-COVID, we'll probably get a blend going. We will do a blend of working from home and a blend of in the office meeting face to face. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right, Teresa. And I think we need to make sure that we don't fall into the same traps with working from home. So, for example, we can schedule, 8 or 9 Zoom meetings in a day. Sure. And not give ourselves any break at all. And it's nearly a worse situation. You don't get any time to sort of stop and go, hang on, what happened in that meeting and what do I have to do as a result of it? And, to reflect. So it's this constant filling of time. It's nearly like every sort of gap of time that we get. And so now we're not traveling and driving and so on. We fill it with other things. So I think it's about stopping and making sure that some bad behavior doesn't get in there.
I suppose there's a temptation of going back to the office when the kids have gone to bed. That type of thing, but it's about retraining our habits.
Yeah, really. It's interesting. I hadn't thought about it before, but now that we're talking mostly about teachers and so on, there's an awful lot to be learned from entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs often start, as I did in my parents' TV room. Sure. And, and the off switch doesn't tend to happen because you tend to be pretty passionate about what you do. And so, I know plenty of entrepreneurs when started their business used to walk out their front door, round the block and back in as if they were going to work. And at the end of the day did the same. And a lot of those really sort of smart, simple tools could be used by others now that are doing the combination of working from home, because it's a real discipline. It's hard to work from home.
It is, yeah. I think I'd say lockdown 1 was hard on people, was really, really hard on people. But there's a certain familiarity at this point and a certain balance entering it, wouldn't you think?
Absolutely. I think from talking to people, they seem to be tired mostly too, and it's harder to keep up the positive attitude. Sure. But what I would say is,
kind of glass half full, look what you have,
it is,
as opposed to what you haven't got, yeah.
It's not about being happy clappy about things or being Pollyanna about things. We all know that terrible things happen for everybody.
About connecting. It's about connecting, isn't it?
It's about connecting, and it's about stopping and reflecting and having control over what you can control, and acknowledging what you can't control. And that hugely helps.
I used to have a phrase in my younger day: worry about it and don't worry about it, it'll still do its own thing. And since then I've read that really we only have governance over 15% of what happens to us in our lives. We really need to stand back and say, right, is that within or outside of my control? And if it's outside of your control, let it go. What do you think?
Yeah. Look, this was a big thing when COVID first hit, with so many people suddenly their income stopped, or they couldn't see their parents or whatever it might be. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, what have I got control over? I actually don't have control over how many times my parents wash their hands, but I do have control over the amount of times I contact them to see how they are. So I can only control, what I can control. I can't control that they keep deciding to go out to chat to everybody else down the road. I know. But you can only control what you can control.
So Lift Ireland as a template for Lift the World post-COVID, what could it look like?
So
that's a hard one now.
No, well, actually, do you know what the lovely thing about Lift is? That it's very scalable, and it's the structure and how we've set it up lends itself to massive scale very quickly and massive growth. So we can see that over the 10-year period that we will achieve our growth targets. Now, impact is more important to me than growth. So we're looking at the impact on individuals, the impact on organizations like schools, and the impact on society in general. And NUI Galway are helping us with looking at that impact. When we finish this in 2028, we should then be able to, and what we would love to do in the time running up to then is to share with other countries and other cities, because let's face it, we are a big little country. Sure. But we should be able to share with others what we have done.
It's just striking me as I speak to you, and I haven't ever thought about this as a question for you. Is there space in some of the courses already in place in third level institutes? Is there space for a module called Lift?
Yeah, there absolutely is. And in fact, Galway, which is our first university to fully partner with Lift, they did put it in as part of their curriculum on one of their subjects. Just before Christmas, and it had very powerful impact and got great feedback from students, and students citing really relevant, now anonymous examples of where their behavior was changing, which is what we're looking at. So it absolutely is.
Even with teacher training colleges.
Yeah, and in fact, UCD School of Education, we're training a group of teachers there this week.
Brilliant.
So yes, absolutely.
It's about getting to the base, yeah. So what are your keywords of advice to our young as you stride forward with Lift Ireland? What keywords of advice would you give to our young?
I'd love to say to our young people that leadership is about who you are on the inside. And it's all about being bigger on the inside than you are on the outside. Right. That's what's most important. Sometimes we get mistaken with what leadership really is. And sometimes it's because of the positional leaders that we can see worldwide around, that we think leadership is about ego and wealth and power and other things. And it's absolutely not. It's about good behavior.
And it's attainable by everybody. It's not just a lofty position that's not attainable to them.
That's exactly it. And that if we all work hard at our inside, if we work hard at our integrity, our empathy, our listening, our positive attitude, our respect, our determination, our competence, our accountability. So how I hold myself accountable, but how I hold other people accountable in a respectful and a kind way. If we all work on these areas, then we strengthen our inside, and then people want to follow us. And that's what really good leadership is. And it's about re-educating everybody that good leadership is not about power, and it's not about position, that I can have a position of power and hold a title, but it does not necessarily make me a great leader. So I think it's to understand that every single young person, for them to understand that they are leaders in their lives. That's
and that they are worthy and that they have infinite potential. It's the self-belief that will drive it on.
Absolutely. Every single one of them is a leader. It's so important that we keep on telling them that. They know it deep down, and it's important that we keep on reaffirming it. They are phenomenal. Our young people are phenomenal, and they are taking our country to where it's going to go next. I'm very excited about it. And in fact, before COVID, we took a whole load of transition year students from Confees to college that actually led lift roundtables with CEOs and HR directors, all 20, 30 years older than them. And they led every single table. They were magnificent. Absolutely.
Can you imagine the seeds you're sowing there? Can you imagine the confidence building that was there? And by the same token, these leaders who have gone ahead in their organizations itself across their career spans, in a way, it was a bringing back a moment to reflect and a grounding for them. Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I am so taken with Lift, and I'm thrilled I trained. I keep promoting you. People are this morning I was on a call with a deputy principal of a school who is going on to train with you this week. So I congratulate you. And it's brilliant. You moved with the little nudge, the spirit. You moved with the spirit, and I know you're working with your brother on this. And it's a family affair, really. And you have some great people around you working with it. So I will be keeping an eye on that space. And thank you so much for taking time out of a busy schedule to answer my questions, asking the hard questions about our future and the legacy we're leaving our young, or the legacy they're building, the seeds we're sowing for them to build. Thank you so much.
Teresa. Thank you so much.
Thank you.